now, live from beautiful and exciting Las Vegas, one of the most influential talk show hosts in America, radio icon Alan Stock.
And a good morning. Great to have you with us on this Monday morning. I'm very happy to welcome to the KDWN studios Dr. General Congressman Joe Heck. Doctor, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Alan. It's good to be back in studio with you. The last few times it's been over at the beautiful Emerald Island.
It has been, as a matter of fact, and we'll have to do that again real soon as well. I better call you Congressman because there may be another title in your future. Tell us about the big announcement today.
Well, thanks, Alan. Thanks for having me on the show. You know, obviously there's been a lot of speculation as to what seat I might be running for come 2016. And, there's been a lot of discussion with my family, looked at what the issues are that we face, over the last 4.5 years that I've been blessed and honored to represent CD3. We've seen Nevadans struggle to get and keep a job, parents wondering about whether or not their kids are going to get a quality education, whether or not they can afford their health care, if they can raise a family in a safe, secure community. And so we are going to run for the United States Senate, and I'm here to announce it first on your show that we will throw our hat into the ring officially as of 7 a.m. this morning to run for the U.S. Senate because I think my life's experiences make me ideally qualified to tackle the problems that Nevadans are concerned with the most. When you look at having been a former small business owner, know what it's like to make a payroll, hire people, create jobs, provide benefits. With a degree in education, I spent 23 years in the classroom myself, 3 kids that are the product of the public school system. I understand the concerns that parents have about education. 25 years as an emergency medicine physician, taking care of everyone, regardless of ability to pay, time of day, whatever their chief complaint is. And I've seen what works and what doesn't work in the healthcare system. And certainly after 24 years of wearing a military uniform and 20 years of working with law enforcement, I think I know what it takes to keep our families, our communities, and our nation safe. So we are running for the United States Senate.
Well, congratulations. I appreciate you taking the time to do it on my show today and here at KDWN. And I certainly wish you the best. You have been a very popular and successful congressman, and I think that you'll do very, very well running for the U.S. Senate. I think it's going to be the biggest problem you're going to have is whether or not Republicans become our worst own enemies during this time. I mean, that's the biggest problem you're going to face. I don't think you're going to face the other problems, though, of getting the ideas across, which we'll talk about in a second. But the Republicans have got to be able to coalesce around somebody and not beat the hell out of each other, to be honest with you. And right now, what's going on with the presidential campaign, I mean, with Trump, people are saying good and bad things about him. But if you look at the polls, he is rising to the top of several polls, which I've been talking about this morning. It's very important. You see this young girl who was shot precipitously in San Francisco the other day by a guy who was deported several times. He's in a sanctuary city, which they will not touch him. And he, for no reason, out of the blue, goes up and he kills this gal. And so I think people are concerned about a lot of issues, but when Trump expresses it, I know that people say, well, it's a little bit extreme. I've felt that myself. But on the other hand, it seems that people are agreeing with him, and he's rising to the polls. What's your read on this whole issue of illegal immigration? Some people want comprehensive immigration reform. I say seal the borders before you do anything. Your thoughts?
Well, we have a broken immigration system, and that means that, the laws that we have aren't being enforced. It means that some of the laws that we have need to be changed so that we can have better enforcement. I mean, one of your callers previously mentioned mandatory E-Verify. I think that's critically important. Matter of fact, I'm a co-sponsor of that bill, so that all employers have to make sure that somebody who's seeking a job is present and legally able to work in this country. And so and this is the debate we've been having for the 4.5 years that I've been in Congress. And so we want to do it in a stepwise fashion, beginning with border security, moving into a guest worker program, looking at high-tech visas, looking at addressing the dreamers, and then addressing those that are here in an illegal status. So it has to be done. Without a doubt, it has to be done.
But in that order.
Well, I think they can be done in parallel. They can be done sequentially, but I think that they need to be done as individual blocks and not one large 2,000-page bill.
But doesn't the border have to be secured before you do anything? Because if you're doing all the other stuff, which I agree with you on a lot of this, by the way, but while you're doing that, people are teaming across the border. And, you've got to, you heard me use the example, if you heard me talking to him about that, you got a hole in your boat, what are you going to think about? What's for dinner tonight? Are you going to sit there and worry about plugging that hole? And right now we've got a hole in our boat. Our borders have people teaming across. And to me, that's the first thing we've got to be able to do.
Well, we certainly need better enforcement and security. And that means borders north, south, ports of entry, and interior security. I mean, 40% of those that are here in an undocumented status are on visa overstays. So they came here legally on a visa. Their visa expired and they didn't leave. So we have to have a better approach at enforcement. And so certainly that but when you come to the border needs to be secured or close the border, how do you define that? And that was one of the big questions that was debated. I mean, you'll never get to a 0% solution where no one is coming across a border, north, south, or port of entry.
You can make every effort for it.
Well, you can, and we should. But you also have to address the other issues that are associated with immigration. And I think that that's the path that we need to take in order to address this system. Look, we tried to pass a bill in Congress not long ago, actually an amendment to a bill that would have given Border Patrol the authority to go into federal lands, national wilderness lands, in motorized vehicles. Because right now they're not allowed to do so because it's wilderness land, and you can't take a motorized vehicle into wilderness lands. So where do you think illegal crossings are occurring? Through those lands where they know, north and south, that Border Patrol cannot go into unless they're going in on horseback or on foot. We couldn't even get something as simple as that passed in the last Congress. So, look, again, there are multiple pieces to the immigration debate that need to take place and that we need to address, and we need to do that in a stepwise, deliberative fashion.
Congressman Joe Heck here, who is obviously wants to become our next U.S. Senator to take Harry Reid's place, making the big announcement on our show just a few moments ago. What got you motivated to run, by the way?
To switch over to the Senate race?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, again, a lot of discussions were taking place, back in Washington, here at home, and within my house, about what should be the next step. And as many people know, I was rather reluctant initially, had a lot of concerns, doing well in the House, like my committee assignments, like where I am, concerned about more time away from home, having to travel statewide, concerns about being able to do my job as a congressman while trying to run for another job, interference with my military career, which is very important to me. And so we had a lot of meetings and a lot of discussions with some of the freshman senators who were members of my congressional class, who are now over in the Senate, talked with them about how they made the transition, how it impacted their lives, talked about it with my family, talked about it with Dean Heller, and we were able to work through a lot of the concerns that we had that brought us to the point of, okay, this is potentially doable. And then we looked at the issues and what are the issues that we face as a state and as a nation. People are still struggling to find and keep a good paying job. And I think I have the expertise to try to impact the ability to grow our economy and support policies that will help create jobs.
The unemployment rate now we know has gone way down. It's 5.3 nationally or something like that, but that does not take into account people who have dropped out of the job market.
Look, there are so many people in Nevada that are still unemployed or underemployed or have just stopped looking that aren't included in those numbers. And so we know, I mean, I've traveled around CD3, I traveled around all Clark County, and I've seen those people who, look, we do job fairs twice a year. At the last job fair, we had over 700 people show up looking for a job in a 4-hour period. So that tells me that there are still people in need. And so we've got to look at what types of policies will help the business owner grow, create a good paying job, so that more people can get back to work, take care of themselves, take care of their families. And that's one of the reasons why I want to run for U.S. Senate. Look at the healthcare debate that continues on. If it's one thing we know from the healthcare law is that access to health insurance does not equal access to health care. And so I'm running for the U.S. Senate to push patient-centered, patient-driven reforms that actually increase access to quality, affordable health care. And we have ever-increasing global risks and threats to the United States and our interests. And after still serving for 24 years in the military, I think I understand the issues of what's going on over in the Middle East and around the globe, whether it's a resurgent Russia, a more militarized China, the terrorist threat out of the Middle East. We need people that understand those threats and how to respond to those threats. And that's why I'm running for the U.S. Senate.
Do you, are you going to be able to somehow mitigate the time you spend on your service in the military as you run for office and at the same time fulfill your obligation as a congressman? I
believe so. And it was interesting because I spoke with a couple of the members of the Senate who were also in the Guard and Reserve. And they said, look, you're only running for re-election in the Senate every 6 years, as opposed to the House, which is every 2 years. So every other year, I have to juggle being a congressman, running for re-election, and doing my military service. Now, potentially, I will only have to do that once every 6 years as to once every other year. So it gives me much more time to spend on my military career.
Very important point to bring up also, because we were talking about this during the break, and that is we're talking about illegal immigration, talking about a lot of things. And one of the issues I brought up was the issue of San Francisco being a sanctuary city. And if they're not going to comply with the laws of the federal laws of the land, and they were partially responsible for this girl dying because this guy should have been, they knew he should have been handed over to ICE, but they decided not to because they're a sanctuary city. Should they have their federal funds frozen if they're not going to comply with the federal laws of the land?
Look, certainly this goes back to the overriding issue of our current immigration system is broken on many levels. We have laws on the books that are not being enforced. We have additional laws that need to be passed, again, going back, for instance, to the E-Verify, and we need to look at this from a holistic perspective. I believe that if there is a city that is receiving federal funds that is not complying with federal law, that those funds should be withheld, contingent upon their compliance with federal law.
All right, and you likened it to people seceding from the union. I mean, if this is what they plan to do, which is not participate in the laws of the country, and they're not going to abide by it, then yeah, they should become their own country, their own city, their own state.
You know, the federal government has a responsibility for enforcing and passing immigration laws. And although they have not been doing a good job at it as late, that does not give a municipality or a state the ability to write their own immigration laws.
Okay, so you have the opportunity to become a Republican senator from the state of Nevada. Dean Heller is a Republican senator. We would have two Republican senators, and you'd be taking the place of a guy who is he had one time represented Nevada, I believe. When I first met him 16 years ago, I thought he did. And then he became the head of the Democrat Party in the Senate. And at that point, he became solely a Democrat. I mean, everything he did was for the party. And we would hope that you would be working then with a Republican president. What Republicans running right now do you think really have the best chance of not only getting the nomination, but of actually winning the election, whether it's Hillary or Sanders or any of them that they're running against?
Well, you know, that's a great question because there are many people in the field, and the field isn't quite complete as yet. And I think there are several candidates, that many have said would be in the tier one category. Folks like Scott Walker, Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush. We've seen Bobby Jindal and Chris Christie get in, Carly Fiorina, Ben Carson. I mean, there are so many people, Donald Trump, that have thrown their names into the arena. And so I ultimately think that I'm partial to a governor. Because I think that if you're going to run the country, it would be beneficial if you had run a state, that you had some executive experience. Doesn't mean that that's the end-all, be-all, but I think having a governor or somebody with executive experience is what we need moving forward.
Could you see a Scott Walker, Carly Fiorina ticket?
I think there are multiple, iterations of how you can move the chess pieces and line up the current folks in the field to have a presidential and vice presidential ticket that I think could do very well, not just in Nevada, but nationally, and ultimately occupy the White House.
All right, and what you're going to do is you're going to wait and see, obviously, who's generating what out of debates. You mentioned to me, well, debates don't necessarily mean you have the ability to raise money. But on the other hand, you take somebody like Donald Trump, and even though you may not like how he said what he said, a lot of people, I would guarantee you 80 to 90% plus of this country agrees with a lot of things he said, not the way he said it maybe, but they really agree. We're tired of this kind of thing like that happened in San Francisco and giving handouts to people who are coming over here with no respect for this country whatsoever. There
are a lot of folks that will run on a populist message and hope to gain traction. It's how President Obama was elected in 2008. A lot of people liked what he said in 2008, and he ran on a populist message, and that's what got him elected.
That's what Ross Perot did, but he never even gained the traction that Donald Trump has gained, though.
Well, so I think, again, a lot of candidates, still more to enter the field, and we will see how things progress through the first couple of debates. I've met with some of the candidates, look forward to meeting with others and talking about how they view running the United States.
Are you looking at anyone to replace you in the 3rd Congressional District?
No, I know several folks have reached out to me to ask what I was going to do about the Senate race and had expressed an interest in potentially running for CD3. So I'm going to let those folks make their announcements as they deem appropriate.
So you won't endorse anyone at this point?
Not at this point. There are several folks that have approached me that are interested, and we'll wait and see who actually gets into the race.
So whoever gets the nomination, you'll be behind them solidly, of course. All right. Listen, I wish you the very best. I appreciate, again, the fact that you came here. Dr. Joe Heck joining us this morning here to announce his candidacy for the Republican nomination for Senate. And I also have to announce that you've been chosen, designated the Grand Marshal of the Veterans Day Parade this year. So not only will you be there,
thank you.
Not only will you be there, you will be in the lead car, and you've done a lot behind the scenes to help make sure that the parade continues after this year. That's our theme this year. And I know Steve Sisolak and Susan Brager have done a lot. Mm-hmm. Also, you have been incredible what you have done. People have no idea how much you've brought in and helped us out. So we appreciate that. The Grand Marshal and a Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Alan.
The very best to you.
Thank you.
Congressman Joe Heck, who may be our next U.S. Senator.